Hello everyone, my name is Sharan Hiramat. I am part of the product management team, responsible for some of the features in JFrog X-Ray product. This session is about application security testing market. It's going to be in two parts. We're just going to have a high-level overview of what application security market looks like, who are the players in this space, who are our competitors and things like that. And the second part, we're going to talk a little bit more about the personas that you are going to be approaching as part of the sales cycle, right? And that is very important. And thanks to Ron, we also have our own AppSec team and CloudSec teams that are going to be part of this session. Right after this one, we're going to have a discussion with our own security teams, because that way you will get to see what the priorities are, what are the KPIs they are interested in, and things like that, right? So that is the objective of this session. So, like I mentioned, I've been with JFrog for about 3 years now. I'm part of the X-Ray product management team. If you're in the US sales, most likely you've probably interacted with me. I cover the US most of the time, but feel free to reach out to me for any X-Ray related questions. I'd be happy to help you guys as well. I've been in the security industry for quite some time. Paul told me to say 20 years. I was saying very specific numbers. He said, say about 20 years. So I'm going to say about 20 years. I worked for Proofpoint in the past. I worked for Trend Micro for a while and so on. So I've worked in network security, endpoint security, virtualization security, cloud security, and so on. Now application security. Okay, so feel free to interrupt me if you have any questions. I know we have a 45-minute session, so I'll try my best to keep it entertaining. Also, one of the things is, I saw many of you have already worked in app security, so the first few slides are going to be really boring for you because you already know the market, but I want to make sure that somebody who has not sold any security product in the past still is up to pace and is able to deliver value to our customers. So that's why I'm going to start with very basic, so if you feel it's very basic, ignore it, okay? So when you go and approach your customer and they're talking about, when you approach any InfoSec persona, they're going to be saying like data security, cyber security, and other terminology that you'll run into. All the time, whenever somebody talks about data security, they are talking about these three things. One is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. This is called as the CIA triad. Some books also call it AIC, and but anyway. The point is, anybody that says data security, they're usually talking about one of these things or a combination of these. Confidentiality is making sure that your data is kept secure. Unauthorized people don't have access to your data, right? That's basically confidentiality. The reason I'm talking about this is, you will hear customers express these concerns in different keywords. Like, hey, what about encryption? What about access control? Hey, what about data at rest? How does JFrog protect my data when it's at rest? How does JFrog protect my data when it's in motion, right? Those are the type of questions, if they ask you, that means they are talking about confidentiality of their data, okay? Second, integrity. Obviously, you want to make sure that if your data is confidential, you don't want anybody to tamper with, right? So integrity is about making sure that your data is not tampered with. And you'll hear customers talking about, hey, checksums, digital signatures, how do you validate the data, and so on and so forth. So if you hear any of these keywords, that means they are worried about the integrity of the data, okay? The last one is availability, and this is very important as well. We were giving you an example of, F-22 bomber in the previous session. If I don't use it at all, if I, park the F-22 in one place and it's not connected to any network, it's definitely secure, right? But, at the same time, you want to make sure you use it for what you have it. So availability is also a very important concept, and people might ask that, hey, what's your SLA, what's your uptime? You have 4 nines, 5 nines. If they might ask this for our own SaaS version, right? And they're talking about availability in that case. And they might say, hey, what type of redundancy you have, what type of DDoS protection, distributed denial of service attack protection do you have, right? So if customers are asking you about disaster recovery or DDoS protection, they are worried about availability. So anytime anybody says security, think of this through these dimensions. They are worried about one or more of these, okay? Okay, so I am going to quickly ask you guys a question. Which aspects of the CI trade do you think X-ray will help with our customers with? Tricky question.
Integrity?
Integrity, okay. It's all of them. Right? Because, integrity is one thing definitely, if a software has a vulnerability that either, can have impact on, confidentiality or availability or any of them, right? Or combination of them. So just keep this in mind when you're talking to customers. Okay, so that's about the basics of when somebody talks about data security, they're talking about CIA. Then let's look at the market itself. Every year, I've been going to RSA for 20 plus years now, RSA conference that's going to happen in May this year in San Francisco. Every year there are around 50 new startups in data security space. And if you look at the market itself, you have network security, you have web security, you have endpoint security, and digital risk management, IAM or identity access management, so on and so forth. So there are several different market segments inside the cyber security space. But what we are focusing on is on the application security space, right corner. And to further complicate it a little bit, application security space has two variations in them. Web application firewalls are, again, depends on which analyst that you're talking to or the industry analyst you're talking to, they might group them under application security. But pure application security testing space is what you'll see here, and this is where we play. Okay, so application security testing is basically where our security products play, and I want to make sure that you guys understand this is where it lies. Okay, so now that we know what application security testing market looks like, let's talk a little bit about what are the buyers and sellers really looking for, or what is the definition of application security market in the first place? So Gartner defines it as, hey, a set of products and services that are designed to analyze and test applications for security vulnerabilities. So this is Gartner's definition, but most of the analysts agree to this definition. End of the day, all of application security testing tools and services are designed to help you with security vulnerabilities, essentially. So you will hear terminologies like SAST, DAST, SCA, MAST, MAST, IAST, first testing, pen testing, and so on and so forth. There are several other things I have actually skipped there. So you will hear then what is SAST, right? SAST stands for static application security testing. AST stands for application security testing. And these analysts love to use acronyms, so I'm sorry about that, but they use AST and everybody uses AST. If you hear AST, that means it's application security testing. Okay, so static application security testing is SAST, where basically you're using the source code and you're analyzing and helping the developers to make sure that they are not introducing any security vulnerabilities as they are implementing the application. So that's security. So the reason I've highlighted these two are where our tools play. So we don't have a solution in dynamic AST, for example, right? But we do have X-ray is primarily a software composition analysis tool. Although it can do much more than a typical SE can do, and you will learn about that, all about that today. It's much more than a typical SE, but if you have to put us in a bucket, this is where most of the analysts will put J for X-ray product line, okay? So, well, you'll know what are the areas where we are out of SCA. Hopefully by end of today you'll have an answer on that. So yeah, the main takeaway I want you guys to think about is that we play in SAST and SCA space, and software composition analysis is all about securing the vulnerabilities inside open source components, essentially, right? So if you want to, I'm going to go over this in a bit, but I'm going to just summarize a little bit. It's about identifying the open source components in use, right? You're building your own application. You want to know which are the open source components that are in use by my application. That's one thing. Second, it'll help you to identify those vulnerabilities associated with those open source components that are in use. Third, it helps you with license licensing requirements as well. So most of these open source components are developed by individual teams. They have certain license restrictions, right? Some of the open source licenses are called viral, meaning if you use the open source component in your product, you are required to share your own source code to the outside world. Some of them are viral. So RPL, AGPL, and some licenses are like this. So most of the legal team in large enterprises, they'll tell you, you cannot use this, you license this license is okay to use. MIT license, for example, everybody will say, you can definitely use that one. But there are certain viral licenses that legal team will say, no, you can never use that in our component. So what will SCA product do? It'll, you can actually define a policy and say, hey, fail a bill if somebody is using a license that is, should not be used in my network, right? In my application. And the last capability of software composition analysis is what's called as operational risk, meaning it's about technical debt that your teams might be carrying, meaning that I am a developer, I'm a recovering developer, I guess. So, I didn't want to update anything because it would break my software and I don't want to fix it. So, I might be using a library from 4 years ago. It works fine on my application. It has a zillion vulnerabilities, but it works, right? So operational risk is about bringing this risk to attention, saying that, hey, you're using a component that's totally outdated, and you should go to the latest version, and here is the one. That's one part of operational risk. The other part of operational risk is also about the open source components that projects that get abandoned, right? Every year there are hundreds of NPM projects that basically are not maintained anymore. So we tell our customers that, hey, you're using this package here. It's not been maintained in 2 years. There has been no check-ins. There's no patches. There haven't been any releases, and you should look at alternatives over here, right? So that is operational risk. So software composition analysis is all about vulnerabilities in open source, license risk, and operational risk, okay? So that's what we're going to be talking rest of the day today. Okay, so I talked a lot about different types of tools like SAS, DAST, IAST, or fuzzing, and so on and so forth, right? If you look at the software development, SDLC process, where does these tools fall, right? So it's requirements and design. Typically there are not many tools, but there are some tools. But again, those are just to aid people, right? But in the implementation phase, you have your developers basically using IDEs or several different integrated developer environments that they'll be using. And automatically we have plugins for SAS, for example, if you have Visual Studio Code or any of the Eclipse or any other 8 different IDEs that we support, you can install a plugin and it'll basically, as you're typing the code, it'll tell you that, hey, this is something that you just declared as a dependency, and this dependency has a vulnerability, and you should probably go to version next one or whatever is the fix. We'll immediately tell you right there and then as the developer is typing. So SAS tools are typically popular in the implementation phase. You can also run SAS tools as part of your build pipeline as well. And this is where, as part of the CI, whenever you check in something, you can also run as part of that, GitHub Actions or whatever, and make sure that you're not introducing any new security vulnerabilities when you're checking in this code. Obviously, SCA is a big part of the implementation phase as well. You don't want to know a month after that, hey, there is a vulnerability or a license risk, because you want to know right there and then as you are implementing, right? So SCA is also part of your CI pipeline most of the time. And we have tools, we have our own plugins that can help you to run SCA scan as part of your CI or continuous integration system. And typically they're on IaaS as well, but I'm not going to focus on that. Next, as you go through the verification, so this is another thing that ties back to the question that I think Tim had about, hey, what's about source code scanning versus binary scanning, right? In the verification stage, you are basically, scanning binaries, right? As part of your SCA scan, because it's already a build. And one thing that you need to know is that JFrog X-Ray can do both. It can help you during the implementation stage as well as during the verification stage. And the pros and cons of, binary scanning was source scanning. We can cover that a little bit later. I don't want to, that can be another half an hour of discussion, and I don't want to do that. But for now, just know that X-ray can help you in both scanning source code as well as binary, although our strength lies in scanning binaries, okay? Okay, let's talk about who the players are. So I'm sure all of us know Gartner Magic Quadrant. I'm sure you've heard of that. It's basically a 2x2, matrix. You get on the x-axis you have completeness of vision, on the y-axis you have the ability to execute, and these are all the different players as part Gartner Magic Quadrant for application security testing last year in 2023. Usually they have another one coming sometime in April-May timeframe. So if you look at it, these are the common competitors we're going to run into. Synopsys, the Black Duck product, basically was the leader in this SES space. Veracode, Checkmark, Sneak, right? OpenText is basically HP. HP bought a company called Fortify that became OpenText now. We rarely run into them, although they are in the leader space. It's very rare that we run into Fortify software as a competition. You also have GitLab. HCL software is a little bit strange. HCL is basically IBM acquired a company called Rational. I'm sure you guys might know. Rational, basically, they sold that to the India-based HCL company, and they maintain that. So again, we don't run into them at all. So, but you just want to know them. GitHub, obviously, is a big player. You have Sonatype, you have MEN. They also are usually what we run against. And you have, if you look at Clue, you have a lot of information on all of this computation. The question is, where is JFrog here? Right? Gartner has basically said that you have to have SCA and SAST. You need to have both of these set of solutions. Only then we are going to list them here. Otherwise, we are not going to list you. JFrog did not have a SaaS tool as of last year. Okay, we just launched it in October or something like that. So we did not have a SaaS solution yet. That's why Gartner said we are not going to list JFrog here in this space because you guys don't do SaaS. You do SCA, but you don't do SaaS, so we are not going to list you here. So that means, we met the analysts that built this, Dale Garden and another gentleman. We met them last year at the Gartner Security Conference. Anyway, the short story is next year they will list us, okay? So, that's one of my goals, to make sure that you see JFrog on this list. So another analyst another analyst that we closely work with is Forrester. Forrester actually is slightly different than Gartner in the sense that they do have what they call it as the Forrester Wave, and similar to Gartner Magic Quadrant, they have their own matrix. It's basically the strategy versus the current offering, right? And they grade us based on how we are purely on software composition analysis. So this wave is for SCA only. It does not include other tools. So, and I can definitely take credit for putting us here. When I joined JFrog, we were here. In 2021, we made sure we made it into contenders, and I was very much involved in doing the demos and talking to the analysts. And then this year we got over. Last year we got over there. So I strongly think that we can. I don't see a reason why we will not be in leaders this next time. Every 2 years they do this. So most likely 2025 is going to be the year they'll have another wave. Hopefully they do. Okay, so the second part of this presentation, so we learned a little bit about the market, who the players are, how does the application security market looks like, Gartner, Forrester Wave, and so on. And now we'll talk a little bit about the personas. Typically, again, I am simplifying this a lot, okay? So typically you'll be interacting with cloud security people, AppSec teams, and DevOps teams as part of the sales cycle. Depending on the organization, they may or may not be reporting to the CISO, but some of them, engineering teams actually have security budget to acquire tools in some cases. Large enterprises, usually they have a dedicated security team that are reporting directly into the CIO or CISO of the organization. We already talked about application security market, and you already know what first-party code is. First-party code is something that I am implementing as part of, I am a developer, I'm trying to implement a use case, and this is my application. I'm writing my own code, that's first-party code. Third-party code is basically anything that you are bringing in from outside, typically open source components. And I'm sure you guys have heard this, that hey, 80 to 90% of the modern software is open source, right? So obviously you want to make sure that you are worried about, or you know the risk that you are assuming by using these third-party components. Question for techies out there is, do you think Docker is relevant in this discussion, first party versus third party? You know Docker containers? If you don't know, it's okay, not a big deal. Do you think it's relevant?
Yes.
Yes. Obviously, because as in Docker, you might be combining both first-party code and third-party code into one Docker container image and deploying it as an application. So it is relevant. So let's talk about app security testing and why do we need app security testing, right? So obvious risks, right? We want to prevent financial loss. Who has heard of the Experian breach that happened a few years ago because they had unpatched Apache Struts vulnerability, right? Apache Struts vulnerability came out. After 30 days, they hadn't even patched it. And, they were able to, I think it was about $700 million loss, if I remember correctly. Okay, so everybody's worried about, financial loss that can happen. So Experian breach is a good one. You can do some homework. You can look it up. Protecting their intellectual property, right? There are a lot of organizations and nation-state actors that want to really get a formula for a paint or blueprints for warhead. Those are happening every day. So this is a big one, maintaining reputation and customer trust, right? And this is a big one. And I remember talking to my parents, and they're like, "Hey, we like Apple because it's secure. I don't even want to look at Android or something else." That's the reputation. As an app security person, I can tell them that that's not really true. But you know what? The general perception is that Apple devices are much more secure because they have full control. And if there is any app that's malicious, they can kick them out, right? End of the day, they have built a reputation that those devices are secure, right? And this is the same concern our customers has. Well, how do we build trust with our own customers, right? Obviously, gone are the days where you could do whatever you want. Now you have compliance and regulations, right? That you have to deal with. You will get fined a lot if you not doing the basics. And right now you can look at SolarWinds and the SEC that's going after them for the SolarWinds breach, right? And obviously, you want to prevent disruption to business, right? Again, I can give you a lot of examples where just the site went down for 2 days and they lost $1 billion or more sometimes. SCA we already talked about. It's about scanning third-party packages, whether it is open source vulnerabilities or CVEs, license risk, operational risk, and you want to make sure that malicious packages. And this is a growing trend that we are seeing, where developers, they really don't know. They are worried about use case, like, hey, there is a Jira ticket, I need to close it, I need to implement this. They're like, oh, there is a JavaScript library here that will help me do that faster. They'll just download it, right? It could be malicious, and we actually help detect those malicious packages and warn our customers that, hey, this is not the right package you should be using. Then when you're talking about scanning first party, this is where you are talking about SaaS, DAST, and IaaS type of tools. 0 days in JFrog's definition, I know the 0-day definition is slightly different if you're looking at vendors like FireEye or other what do you call the APT type of threats that we have been seeing. So our definition of 0-day is something that was not discovered before. That's what is the 0-day. Once it gets a CVE, once it gets assigned a number, that's basically a known vulnerability after that. So that is our very loose definition of 0-day. So you are worried about code secrets. Again, If your developers are not careful, they might just be embedding secrets, API keys, passwords, and things like that in their code. We scan for them. We worried about config secrets, insecure configuration. You will know a lot about this in the next few sessions where we actually start talking about the features in the product. Okay, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. Just for now, think that SA is third party, first party is all about the code that, and the configurations that you're building. Okay. Okay, so again, if you look at the end-to-end software development cycle, you have source code that gets converted to build, and that gets promoted. You release it, you deploy it, and you operate it. So when you are talking about runtime solution, when somebody was asking, it comes under operate, right? Because you are already deployed the application, you want to keep an eye on what's happening, if there are any breaches on the application or any known vulnerabilities are running into production, right? So it's, if you look at application security, it's all about finding weaknesses in the software application that you are building. Okay, so I'll only cover AppSec persona since we only have a few minutes left. So obviously, day to day, these guys are busy implementing policies. Like, hey, there's no reason for anybody to have a malicious package, so you can fail a build if there's a malicious package. Or Log4j vulnerability. If somebody is using your old version of 3.14 version of Log4j library, there's no need to use it. You can basically fail a build and things like that. Those type of policies are maintained by AppSec teams. They are also responsible for penetration testing. They might hire a separate third-party organization to come in and help them with pen testing before releasing. They are also worried about the vulnerabilities and how do they prioritize, because there is too many vulnerabilities, too little time, right? So that is their pressing issue on their mind, is like, how do I get control of all the vulnerabilities that I'm seeing every day? And this is a pain point that we want to address as part of knowing the AppSec persona. And of course, they are responsible for releasing fixes, helping assistance to developers if they need assistance in solving one or more of these. So, question for all of you guys: what is the most important thing for an AppSec person, or what is the more important goal for an AppSec person?
Preventing vulnerabilities getting to production.
Not necessarily. Okay. Any other answers? They still are responsible for app release, right? They want to make sure that the software gets out. That is their primary. Of course, they want to look at the risks that they're assuming as they are releasing these, applications. But they cannot be blocking everything from going into production, because at the end of the day, you're preventing the value from you're sending a value to your customers, or delivering value to your customers. Okay, so I will quickly talk about the KPIs. Obviously, they're key performance indicators, the risk reduction. They want to be effective. They are worried about SLA breaches. SLA breaches here, again, depending on regulatory requirements you might have. So, for example, some of the companies that do FedRAMP, right? As part of that, if you have critical vulnerability, you have 30 days to get handle on that. You have high vulnerability, you have 60 days. You have medium vulnerability, you have 90 days, right? Those are SLAs built into, and every organization defines their own SLA. Some of them, even they might not be under any regulatory guideline, but they will say that, hey, we have to fix critical vulnerabilities in 30 days, and that's our SLA internally. So they are very much involved in SLA, and if they are to, if there's any breach in SLA, they'll have to communicate to their upper management and so on. Okay, so pain points for AppSec. I think this is very crucial. We want all of us to know prioritizing at scale. Like we only have few AppSec teams. Usually, even in large organizations, there will be thousands of vulnerabilities they're dealing with every day. Prioritizing them at scale is the biggest pain point they have. Obviously they want to remediate at scale as well, and they do want to have some automatic controls so that even when they are not watching, automatically these controls will take over, these policies will take over, and make sure that you're not releasing something that is vulnerable and things like that. So one thing that is a new trend that we have started to see in the last 3 to 4 years is developer experience, right? In the past, the tools were really terrible for developers, right? And so of late, all the vendors are very much talking about developer experience because you pay $200,000, $300,000 to hire a really good developer, and then you give them tools from 20 years ago, and they cannot do a good job because they don't have appropriate tools. So the developer experience has been crucial, and even as we are building X-ray product, we want to keep in mind, and that hence you will hear from Harel and others, how we are trying to make it easy on the developers to consume this detection information, to make it really actionable. What can they do based on this information? That the whole developer experience is critical for us. And again, we are listening to our AppSec teams as well. Okay.